Thanks, everyone. It is so good to be back with you. I was just texting with a couple of my friends and just telling them how cool it is to be with brothers and sisters from a little ways away. I'm from Sunnyvale, and it's just so good to be together. We are in different locations, different buildings, but we are family. We are family together, so I'm glad to be here. As Jane has already mentioned a couple of times, we are looking, the church has been looking at disciplines, spiritual disciplines, and the discipline we're going to look at today is worship. Now, worship as a discipline is way more than music. Worship is a way that we respond to God wherever we go, but worship uniquely happens in a Christian community when we sing. And so today I want to talk about this particular way of worshiping. When we come together and we sing, what are we doing? And some of you, when I even mention we're going to preach about singing and worship, you're like, man, I am not that kind of person. I can't sing in tune. That might be some of you. And some of your neighbors right now might be saying, yeah, that's true. You cannot sing in tune. Some of you might be saying, well, I don't even like church music. Some of you might be saying, I've heard a sermon like this before. You have never heard a sermon like this before. We're going to do things a little bit differently today. B, even if you don't like church music, we're going to be talking about something that goes beyond just church songs. And then C, the kind of worship we're talking about applies to whether or not you think you can sing in tune, okay? So we are talking about an ancient mystical tool that might be the key to joy that God has given us. This integration of our soul and our spirit and our bodies. And it's available to anyone. So I want to start in a really interesting and weird way. I want to start by talking about crickets and nightingales. So we're going to play an audio clip, and I want you to listen to these crickets. In the foreground, you'll hear some regular crickets. And in the background, you'll actually hear some crickets that the audio has been slowed down. And as it's slowed down, you can hear how it's almost like music. It's this haunting sound when crickets rub their legs together. And this is actually a pretty dangerous practice that the crickets go through. Male crickets do this for mating, but as they express this sound out loud, they are also making themselves known to predators. So why do they do this? Now, I want to play a clip of some nightingales singing. We're all aware of birds singing. It's such a beautiful thing in nature. Nightingales, the males of nightingales have 180 songs in their repertoire. I have no clue how they figured that out. But the fathers, apparently, according to scientists, the way they sing their song is a way to communicate how good of a father they will be. Now, the way I communicate this, how good of a father I am, is by the amount of dad jokes that I tell and how good I am at barbecuing meat, you know. But it's so interesting to me. I know that's sort of a weird way to start a sermon, but these are creatures that God has created. And we have to ask ourselves, why do they express themselves through this sound? The philosopher Immanuel Kant says, if music confers no survival advantage, where does it come from and why does it work? John Lennon, not the Beatle, but the teacher, said most animals use sound, get this, to express emotion. Singing is a very basic human need, he says. The need to express emotions in a way that completely satisfies the unified body and mind of each individual. It's fascinating. As Jane mentioned, here in Silicon Valley, and maybe for those of us who are Presbyterian, we're often not known for expressing emotion, right? Maybe you've heard this phrase of Presbyterians, the frozen chosen. Have you guys heard that before? The frozen chosen. But the reality is God has created us to go beyond our logic and our reason in our intellect. There's this old saying, Jane and I were just talking about this old saying, where words fail, music speaks. When words fail, music speaks. Sometimes words fail, right? How do you define love if you're a newlywed couple? That's hard to explain, the amount of love you have for the other person. Or if you're a parent and you have a new baby that has been born, you can't express with words what you feel inside. How do you describe freedom to someone who's been rescued from human trafficking? See, words fail, but music is the language to our soul, of our soul. And so singing is this ancient tool God gave to express realities that are deep within. Now, a few more pieces of data if you're not convinced with me. One of the primary emotions that we express in singing is joy. And the act of singing releases endorphins, the brain's feel-good chemicals. In fact, in a group like this, like ours, if scientists show if we were to sing for 30 minutes, our oxytocin levels would raise. And this is the chemical that reduces stress and creates bonding. Isn't that interesting that God tells us to come into a group and sing together? A 1998 study found that after nursing home residents took part in a singing program for a month, there were significant decreases in both anxiety and depression levels. And scientists tell us that we have a structure in our ears that allows us to sing. Have you ever heard this? It's called the saccule. And this small part of the inner ear responds to frequencies created when we sing. And that physiological response gives us pleasure. And they can calm us in a cathartic way. So singing and joy are intimately connected. I want to do a little experiment right now to see if this is true. If I sing this phrase, what happens in rooms like this across the world? Sweet Caroline. Right. Singing is contagious. Right? I didn't have to prompt you. It just happens naturally. Last night, my family and I, we went to a San Jose Giants game. And what do after the 7th inning? We sing another sacred song, right? Take me out to the ball game. Singing is in our DNA. Now, the Israelites understood this magical and powerful tool. They understood that the Bible, these words, it was not just an instruction manual or a book, but the Bible tells stories of love and pain and fear and glory. And right in the middle of the Bible, there are a collection of songs and poetry. It was the hymn book for the Israelites. And in fact, Jesus, this would have been Jesus' hymn book. Jesus would have known most of the Psalms by heart. So what I want to do this morning, and we're going to do it a little differently, is I'm going to look at one of these Psalms. If you want to follow me in your Bible, we're going to look at Psalm 126. And this is a part of a group of songs called Psalms of Ascent. These were songs for the journey. These were songs for a road trip. Just like when we go on a road trip, we crank some Taylor Swift or some Barracuda. The Israelites had these songs for pilgrimages. So we can imagine them walking around in a pilgrimage, and then at night they would stop and they'd get a campfire going. And then they would sing these songs to encourage and tell stories of the past. So we're going to look at 3 different portions of this psalm together, and then we're going to actively practice singing together. So let's start at the beginning of Psalm 126. We see this. When the Lord restored the fortunes of Zion, we were like those who dreamed. Our mouths were filled with laughter, our tongues with songs of joy. Then it was said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them. So if you catch this, in the first 2 verses, this is songs, this is words speaking about the past, remembering what God has done. All of this happens in the past tense. The Israelites had many things to remember, right? Some of them very brutal, but some glorious. God rescuing them from Egypt, God giving them Torah and Sabbath, God providing for them with manna in the desert, and then God giving them a king. See, remembering often brings us joy. Not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, my family sat down and we ate tacos. We eat tacos every week. And every now and then, as we sit down, my daughter will say, "Daddy, tell us the story about you eating tacos in high school." And I'll say, "Okay, here's what happened. I was really a lot younger at the time. My metabolism worked very differently." And I remember calling my mom. She was at a local taco shop, and she said, "How many tacos do you want?" And I said, 22 tacos. And my mom, being the blessed mother that she is, she bought me 22 tacos. And I ate all 22 tacos in one spot. Now, that number has grown over the years. Do I know if it was actually 22 or not? I don't know. But what happens when I tell that story around our table? Our kids are just like, "Whoa, no way!" And we all laugh and we laugh. And this happens to you, right? When you sit around with family and friends, what do we say? "Do you remember that time?" And as we remember these memories, we all start laughing until we cry. This is part of the joy of remembering what God has done in our lives. But then also there's the pain of forgetting. Sometimes I'll show a picture to my kids of some cool memory maybe we've had at the zoo or we've had somewhere else, and I'll show them a picture. I'm like, "Do you remember this?" And they're like, "No." And it sort of hurts my feelings, right? Because that was an important memory for me that they've just forgotten. This is a part of why Alzheimer's is such a brutal disease. Some of you will know this intimately in your family because memories and moments are lost, and it's painful. But interestingly, research has shown that the part of the brain that is linked to musical memory is mostly undamaged by Alzheimer's. So music theory has become a way to help folks with Alzheimer's cope by helping them to remember. It's the power that God has given us through music. So we remember by singing these songs, and we realize we're a part of a bigger story. As the Israelites would look at a psalm like Psalm 126, they would gather around a table. And once a year, they would have a feast called the Seder meal. In this feast, each piece of food and drink, it would connect them to a part of their past. And it would remind them of what God did at the Passover. And they would sing songs. They actually sing this song today. Some of you might have heard it before. It goes, "Da Dayenu, Da Dayenu, Da Dayenu, Dayenu, Dayenu." And this is a song they sing at the Seder meal that says, God is worthy of worship. Even if he had just done one of these things at the Passover, he would be worthy. But he has done all of these things. And similarly, later in life, our rabbi, Jesus, he gathered his disciples for this Seder meal. And he spoke of the importance of remembering, right? He was about to perform a new rescue and a new freedom. He was about to be a new sacrificial lamb, and he gave the disciples a new meal to celebrate, the Lord's Supper, communion. And this would be a time to remember what Jesus had done. And often when I talk about worship to people, what I say is we worship God for who he is, his character, and we worship God for what he has done. And it's vital for us to remember the great things God has done for us. After we remember what he's done in the past, then we see in the Song of Ascent, we see what he has done in the present. This is verse 3. The Lord has done great things for us, and listen to this present tense language. We are filled with joy. We are filled with joy. On a journey, we look back at the past and we look forward to the future, but the only place that we can live is right now, in the present, in this moment. And how often do we miss the beauty of what God is doing in the moment? The past 3 weeks, my family We've sort of been doing our last summer like family dates. We went to the zoo, we went to the San Jose Giants game, and we went to the beach. And the temptation would be to think that these are ordinary times together. But the reality is they are not. My wife and I right now are closely monitoring two different Caring Bridge websites right now. We have two friends that are in their early 40s. One of our friends in Denver, she has a tumor in her brain, and she's been on a vent for almost a week now in the ICU, and they're not sure how much longer she'll live. And so we've been praying for her and her family, friends we've known forever. They have two kids at home. We have another friend in Oklahoma who is waiting to see this week if she has either stage 2 or stage 4 cancer, and they're afraid it might be stage 4 cancer. And so we've been praying for them, thinking about them. They have two kids who are under the age of 10 years old. My grandma, we call her Gigi, she came and visited us 3 months ago, her first time to see the ocean. And about a month ago, she had a stroke, and she's been going through a lot. And so we've been thinking about this reality that there is no such thing as an ordinary time with our family. Every moment is a gift, right? We don't realize the gifts in front of us until we're unsure of how long we will have them. It's just a regular drink of water until you realize that some people in the world still don't have access to clean water. It's a regular visit with your parent until you find out they have cancer, right? It's a regular church service until what happened to all of us 2 or 3 years ago when we aren't able to meet in person again. And we realize how much of a gift it is. Nothing in life is ordinary. It's all a gift. Over a year ago, I did a sermon on gratitude at our church, just about noticing and capturing the gifts all around us. And then a few months after that, a young couple sent me an email letting me know that they started filling out this gratitude journal together, and then it turned into a nightly practice in their early marriage life. Every night, they tell each other what they're grateful for. They're becoming pros at noticing the gifts all around us. And I believe with all my heart, the most joyful people are the people who are masters of noticing, masters of awareness. They're infused with joy because everywhere they look, they see the gifts of God and they respond in gratefulness. And I believe this is what God wants of you, to not miss all the beauty and wonder right in front of you or dismiss it as regular. But now let's finish up with our Psalm 126, verses 4 through 6. So we see what God's done in the past. We see what he's doing right here and right now. And then we look in the future. We see this from the psalmist. Restore our fortunes, Lord, like streams in the Negev. Those who sow with tears will reap with songs of joy. Those who go out weeping, carrying seed to sow, will return with songs of joy, carrying sheaves with them. We see this expectation, words of hope for the future. Eugene Peterson says, joy is nurtured by anticipation. The Jewish people had their shares of trouble, being enslaved, put in captivity, but there was great hope that one day things would be restored. And singing helps bring about that anticipated joy. Similar to the Israelites, African Americans have faced great oppression and enslavement in this when they came to this new land. And they often, in the past, would connect their journey with the Israelites. Many of the slave songs talked about Moses and freedom. And these songs would be sung in horrible conditions to bring a deep-seated hope and expectation for the future. Now, one of these songs was formed from several spiritual and slave songs, and it was called We Shall Overcome. And Pete Seeger, the folk musician, sang it at a civil rights rally, and Martin Luther King Jr., he was haunted by it. And it soon became a rally cry. This song was sung at gatherings in times of distress. And so we have another audio clip of Martin Luther King Jr. talking about this very song and what it meant to him.
We shall overcome. Deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome. Though I join hands so often with students and others behind jail bars singing it, we shall overcome. Sometimes we've had tears in our eyes when we joined together to sing it, but we still decided to sing it. We shall overcome. No, before this victory is won, some will have to get thrown in jail some more, but we shall overcome. Don't worry about us. Before the victory is won, some of us will lose jobs, but we shall overcome. Before the victory is won, even some will have to face physical death. But if physical death is the price that some must pay to free their children from a permanent psychological death, then nothing shall be more redemptive. We shall overcome.
And so they would sing this song, we shall overcome, we shall overcome, we shall overcome someday. Yes, I know in my heart, we shall overcome someday. And as they would sing this together, at protests and at rallies, it would somehow muster in their hearts a belief in the future of what is to come. And for us, followers of Jesus, overcoming is vital to our faith. We remember that Jesus gave himself for us, but physical death was not the end. Jesus came up to Mary Magdalene, and as she was weeping at the tomb, he said, "Woman, why are you crying?" And she explained the death of her rabbi, but then he looked at her and he said her name. And she realized in an instant he was alive. He had overcome death. Those who sow in tears will reap in songs of joy. And this is the symbol for us, resurrection, that we are a kingdom, part of a kingdom of overcoming. We are more than conquerors through Christ who gives us strength. So whatever you are going through in this life, or whatever you see on the news, the times when we feel that things have broken us and it's impossible for the future, we sing songs of anticipation and hope for the future. We ache for justice and ache for restoration. We remember who God is and what he's done. We remember what he is doing in the moment, and then we wait for what he will do for eternity.